this myth of Canada as being an inviting country. Well, ask the people on the Kamikaze Maru, ask the Japanese Canadians who were interned during the Second World War, ask Native people, ask Black Canadians, ask the Black Empire loyalists who came to Canada from the United States because they supported Britain and ended up in slums and horrid conditions like that were manifest in places and continue to be manifest in places like Africville and the inner city ghettos that we see in Toronto today that are the Africville of 2009. Right? So we can't get visas to get here. That's the reality. If you want a visa to come to Canada, as a student, as a visitor, as an immigrant, you got to meet certain standards. If they don't think you're going to go back to your country, you won't get a visa. And for those people who are gender bandits, for those people who don't come from a particular class or socioeconomic background, you will not get a visa. You can just sit where you are and die. That's the reality. For people to be able to get to Canada, they need a visa. To get a visa, you need a particular profile. And that particular profile is getting tighter and tighter and smaller and smaller. Right? So don't believe that Canada is an accepting or a humane country. We have the hope. We do. There aren't very many places that have the potential that Canada does. I love this country, I truly do. Right? And so my critique of this country comes from a desire to make it even better than it is. There's wasted potential. There's people who need to be here, and they can't get here. They need to get here because they need to save their lives. They need to get here because they need to make this country a better country. And the people who have gotten here need better opportunities.
Yes.
And when we as people of color and as immigrants speak, we speak with our voices and our bodies and our experience. And often we get demonized. You know, we're all used to the tokenism. Right? Put us in the front. Put them in the front of the parade. When you want to talk about sharing power, well, that's a different issue. Right? We can sing and dance real well, but hey, who wants to be queen or king for the day? Sorry, I'm being a bit facetious. It's been a rough month for me. For those of you who've been following the media, you'll know what I'm talking about. But what do we find for immigrants and for refugees, particularly from the developing world, 2 minutes? So I think this was peace, but I think Gareth is telling me I have 2 minutes. So, you know, what happens? You go to an embassy somewhere in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, blah, blah, blah. You need to get out. You're gay, you're lesbian, you're bisexual, you're transgender. And particularly, you know, I said to Doug Elliott, who's this wonderful gay human rights activist, a leader in our community. Doug, wave your hand. There you go. We also, for those of you who don't know Doug, you really should. We owe him so much as a community. But we were outside, and I said, Doug and I have known each other for 15 years, and I said, I'm a lot more demure, and he looked at me and he said, what? And I said, well, I'm not wearing my eyeliner up to here, and I don't have my hair split up, right? So, which is what you would have seen maybe 15 years ago. But, you know, you need to conform in order to be able to get a visa. You need to meet a particular socioeconomic profile. And the reality is that the people who are on the bottom of the socioeconomic profile, the people who don't conform are the people who are the most at risk and who can't get out. And what happens for even the ones who can get out when you get here, right? Within our ethno-racial religious communities, often we are too white. And for mainstream society, we're not white enough. Where do we end up? We end up here. So, what I have seen as a refugee and immigration lawyer is a decreasing access, not just in terms of refugee and immigration rights, but all around. Right? Charter challenges have been cut, funding for charter challenges have been cut, except for education. Except for language, so English and French. That's nice. So we create a hierarchy of rights. I most likely have 30 seconds left. If that. I see hope. I see hope in the fact that increasing numbers of so-called mainstream groups and organizations are striving to be more inclusive. As immigrants, as refugees, as people of color, as gender bandits, as queer people, we need to push that envelope. We need to force our own birth community